Council and those in the gallery. This is our regular meeting for March 10, our regular council meeting. And tonight we'll start with a moment of reflection before we get into the approval of our agendas. So we'll start with a moment of reflection now. All right, thank you very much. To start tonight, we have a consent agenda. Is anyone prepared to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, or if they have anything they wish to pull from the consent agenda? Councillor Fox moves we approve the consent agenda. There's no further discussion. We'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And a regular meeting agenda. I've heard of no additions or change requests. So a motion to approve the agenda is presented. Councillor Wolstenholme makes that motion. Call it the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. We have a section here for the good of council, opportunity for council to share any highlights from the last couple of weeks. Anything they'd like to highlight with the rest of the council or administration. So does anyone have something they wish to share? It's been a bit of a quiet couple weeks, but Councillor Poitras.
Hello. All right. Well, seeing our wonderful delegation from STARS here tonight, it reminds me that the STARS Charity Volleyball Tournament is coming up here in Fort Macleod. So that will be the weekend of April 11th, so in about a month's time. So great weekend in town here. We always enjoy seeing everybody come out playing some volleyball, and it's definitely for a wonderful cause. And so if you're interested, you can contact the Fort Macleod Volleyball Club if you want to put in a team or volunteer or donate. They're the ones to check in with. So that's coming up in a month.
Any other comments? I was going to thank the RCMP for once again coming and doing a bit of an open house with the residents. They've been doing it, I think, once a quarter, at least twice a year, to be able to get some feedback from the residents. So we appreciate them doing that for us today. And any other comments? CEO Burdette.
Now, this isn't really my comment because I didn't get to attend due to an injury, but the town of Fort Macleod put in a curling team, and we did pretty well, given that for some it was their first time stepping onto the ice, and for others they had curled a few times, but we did quite well.
Nicely done, Christina. Yeah. All right, if there's no other comments for the good of council, we will proceed tonight with a few delegations that we have, in which we will start with STARS. After that, we'll have Northback present, and then after that, we have the new federal Liberal candidates wishing to present to council as well. So we'll start tonight with Jackie and presenting on behalf of STARS. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here again this year. This year marks 40 years of STARS serving Alberta and actually Western Canada with the highest level of critical care to the ill and injured when they need it most. STARS is your best hope in a worst case scenario, And as a charitable organization, we continue to operate at no cost to the patient after all of these years. Many thanks to our many donors that continue to support us. We're very thankful that the town of Fort Macleod has joined the municipal initiative. So where does all of the funding come from? I'll speak to Alberta today. We're happy that we secured another 10-year service agreement with our largest donor, Alberta Health Services. So this is at the $15 million per year in block funding. After that, we still must fundraise 56% of our direct operating costs. Is the presentation up on your guys' screen? Because I don't see it up here. Okay. That's all right. I just realized I have mine to look at, but nobody else can see it. Technology. Well, I'll just share a little bit about where the funding comes from. So after the government funding, we rely on a few different sources. The Alberta Stars Lottery, which is still underway right now up until March 27th, is our largest fundraiser and brings in enough funds to cover the cost of one base in Alberta. So that's around 11.4 million. So we appreciate everybody's continued support with that. If you want to go to ab.starslottery.ca to purchase your tickets, we greatly appreciate your support. After that, we rely on community-driven fundraisers, much like the Town of Fort Macleod volleyball tournament that's been going on for quite a few years now. So I appreciate the mention of that, as well as across southern Alberta, just to speak of a few, would be the Real Estate Center. They were in their 11th year of fundraiser, their largest fundraiser this year, as well as Tabor Charity Auction that is 30 years this year, I believe. So we're very appreciative of all the effort that goes in from all of the communities to put on those fundraisers. As well, we get a number of donations from businesses, corporations, and individual donors. As well as the municipal initiative, which you are now contributing to. So thank you so much. I'll just pause for a second here. We've got light. That's a positive sight. Would you like me to keep going, or should we wait? All right. All right, so the slide that we would be on now is our last fiscal year in review. All right, thank you very much. Right there, perfect. We weren't too far in. So this is our last fiscal year in review, and I'm just going to highlight a few things here. So going along the second row, over 37,000 emergency requests came into our Emergency Link Center in Calgary. So this increased over 1,000 calls from the previous year. Missions, over 3,900 missions flown. That increased by over 500 missions from the previous year. And this is speaking to all 6 bases across Western Canada. 1,720 of those missions were in Alberta. And then, as I said before, the average, like the base cost is 11.4 million with 3 bases in Alberta. So that makes up our budget of 34.2 million. The types of missions that we fly for are listed on the right-hand side. So you can see, first of all, vehicle incidents is number 1, and after that it is cardiac. Next slide, please. This map speaks to the municipal support that we have across Alberta and northeastern BC. Thank you, Town of Fort Macleod, for joining the initiative in support of this essential service for your community. To speak to a few other municipalities in the area that have joined, also Town of Nobleford, Village of Champion, Town of McGrath, County of Warner, which is not changed on this map quite yet, and also MD of Tabor, Town of Tabor, Village of Barnwell, to speak of a few. So we're very grateful for that because, as you see, our missions and costs increase year after year. So we have over 94% across the province. And this map just shows the different levels of support. So shown in the light blue or gray, if you will, would be our partners that are at under the $2 per capita. The navy sea of blue across the map shows our regional leaders. And so these leaders are contributing $2 per capita and higher. And the town of Fort Macleod is a regional leader. So thank you again. There also, many of them are on a fixed rate of support and may have put STARS on a standing motion to create that long-term sustainability for us. Shown in the green on the map are our provincial leaders. So these are many of the counties or MDs that are on a much higher level of support. And to recognize them as a leader, we've actually, when they reach the $500,000 mark, of cumulative giving, then they're recognized with a logo on the helicopter. So that's a way that we can show our appreciation. The areas shown with the red box around it, that shows our full regional partnerships. So this is where the towns and villages in partnership with the county or MD are all contributing to STARS in a united effort. And all of us across the province coming together, we're really creating a robust health and safety network for all of us. Next slide, please. Okay, in recognition of STAR's 40th anniversary, we've decided to give you a greater history of the missions throughout the MD of Willow Creek, which obviously includes Fort Macleod. So in 15 years, 378 missions flown, which is on average 25 per year. You'll see, each year it really varies, with less missions actually in 2024, which is a good thing. To speak to your interfacility transfers, like from the Fort Macleod Hospital and near Fort Macleod, those combined are 7 to 8 missions per year. So interfacility transfers can be anything that STARS coordinates, whether that be by air, like by ground ambulance, or by the helicopter, pardon me. Next slide, please. All right, so the previous map spoke to any mission that was flown within the MD of Willow Creek. This map speaks to Fort Macleod specific residents. And so on the left-hand side, you will see a series of blue dots. So this shows where the patient lived at the time they were flown by STARS. You can see that 52 Fort Macleod residents were flown since 2010. On the right-hand side, more interestingly, is the series of red dots. So this shows where the patient was at the time they needed STARS. So this particular breakdown includes all residents of the MD of Willow Creek, so I'll just speak to that. 232 total residents flown, 52 that were from Fort Macleod, 31 patients that were picked up within Fort Macleod, and then 201 residents that were picked up from 23 other locations, with those communities listed on the bottom right. This is testament to the value of our partnership, showing that wherever your residents may travel across Western Canada, they're supported by STARS should the unthinkable happen. Next slide, please. STARS is borderless, so we do operate, from our 6 bases across Western Canada, and on average 11 missions per day, totaling more than 60,000 missions to date. Our air medical crew is cross-trained, and so that they're prepared for inclement weather and all kinds of situations to provide the patient with the best hope at survival. So this is actually a sample of a mission log of what we may see coming through the Emergency Link Center on one day. So even though we normally average 11 missions per day, on this particular day, there were 18 different types of missions. I'll highlight just a few here for you. Mission number 3 was for a NICU patient, and this is actually where the STARS picked up the NICU team and took them out to where the critically ill newborn was. They provided critical care on site and then went by ground ambulance with the patient to the hospital. Mission number 6 was a rollover, and after the STARS transport physician received more information, it was not medically required, so our helicopter actually turned around and came back for that one. Mission number 7 was a workshop explosion, and this is where it was deemed that alternate transport would be better for that patient, so the mission was canceled. Number 10 was a motor vehicle collision where the STARS medical crew went by ground ambulance with the patient. So STARS medical crew is available on all modes of transport, as you can see, to be there for our next patient. Next slide, please. All right, so last year we spoke about our night vision goggle capability. For over 20 years now, we've been able to fly at night. And with half of our calls being at night, this is essential. In addition to that, we're also innovative in bringing universal blood on board. For over 10 years now, we've carried universal blood and increased to 4 units of blood in 2019. Now we have a new medication for hemorrhage control to bolster our medical toolkit. So we have added a new blood product called fibrinogen. So what this product does is it helps to clot the blood. If the patient needs more than 2 units of blood, this medication can be administered to help clot the blood, slow down the bleeding, and give that patient the best chance at survival. Next slide, please. Our longest mission ever was flown in fall of 2022, and that was for Doug McTavish. He and a buddy basically went on a fishing trip up in northern BC in the rugged mountains. And so they came to the river, unloaded the boat, went 5 hours upstream, hiked another 2 hours into the mountains. And at that time, Doug realized he was having a full-blown heart attack. So what would they do? There was, very limited services available in the area. It was too late for search and rescue to be dispatched due to the fact that it would be dark soon and they didn't have the night vision goggle capability. And so they thought they would give STARS a try. So through the Emergency Link Center, they actually dispatched from the Grand Prairie base. And from there, they went all the way to Fort Nelson to get fuel, and then to Chi House where the patient was at. The difficult part was that in this heavily treed area, they would need to find an area to land the helicopter. Thankfully, the gentlemen that were up there recalled that there was an opening on the side of the riverbank. So they were actually able to land the helicopter there. At that point, it took all 4 crew members to put packs on their back, go across the water, hike up into the mountain where Doug and his friend were, provide, assess him and everything, bundle him up and bring him back down the mountain, across the water and into the helicopter. At that point, they would then go to Watson Lake to add more fuel, back to Fort Nelson for fuel, and then to Grand Prairie. Doug was stabilized and the air medical stayed with Doug all of this time and actually went with him by Alberta Health Services fixed wing to Edmonton where he could receive the remaining care that he needed. So in the end, 2,408 liters of fuel burned, 1,763 kilometers flown, which is equal distance of Calgary to Los Angeles, 8.2 hours of flight time, 5.3 hours with the patient, and 1 life saved. So we're just extremely proud of the ability of our medical crew and the fact that we are able to go such a distance for a patient that was in an area with very limited resources. Next slide, please. So thank you, Town of Fort McLeod. Like I said, thank you so much for joining the municipal initiative. Your support makes a big difference, as you can see. So in 2024, you joined at 6,600, and our request is a 3-year agreement at 6,600 per year for 2025, 26, and 27. So having a longer range agreement would provide more sustainability for STARS, as well as give us the opportunity to come to your new council, should it change, and have some time to build that relationship with them as well. We would greatly appreciate that opportunity. So in addition to missions flown to your area, I just want to highlight that we also provide physical response and virtual care consultation to your medical professionals at the hospital. So that's another way that we can provide critical care anywhere. Together we're enhancing rural health care, and we are available 24/7. So we appreciate your commitment to providing the highest level of critical care for the residents of the town of Fort McLeod. A life is saved every day, but your partnership continues to make it possible as we continue after 40 years.
Thank you again so much for presenting today, Jackie. We appreciate it, and it's very obvious the teamwork that's provided within STARS is amazing. So I'd start first with asking if council has any questions for Councillor Monteith.
Just two quick ones. You have 37,000 requests, yet the yearly missions is only 3,900. So I'm just wondering what those ones that aren't missions are about. And then I'm just assuming that Claresholm has so many more flights out of Claresholm because there's a hospital there. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, two very good questions, sir. Thank you so much. So in addition to missions flown, and we also have the STARS Vigilant program, which is a site registration program. So many industry partners, especially way up in the remote areas of northern Alberta and BC, have their site registered. So whether they're oil and gas, and part of that is their site coordinates are registered with STARS. And then should an emergency happen on their site, they have direct access to the transport physician, so they would phone our emergency link center direct. And all of those calls that come in are emergency requests. And so we have registered sites all across Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and also in BC. So that makes up a lot of those calls there.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Monteith? All right, any other comments, questions on the presentation? I know I mentioned before the meeting that the Fort McLeod stats in the last year look very, very good. Obviously, our goal is not to see the stats increase, and the goal is to see our residents safe. So even though it was only 2 calls in 2024, that's not a concern. I think the access is always there. Any other comments from administration or anything? Otherwise, Jackie, we do appreciate you coming today. I know every time I see stars flying through the sky, it definitely causes a person to think twice, because you never know what's happening or who's in the unit, right? So we appreciate what you and your team do, and our council will consider your request in the next portion of our meeting.
Well, thank you very much for that. I would also add that even though it's not on this particular map, if a resident is or on these particular stats, if a resident is taken by ground ambulance from this area to Lethbridge Hospital, then that would fall under, you know, your stats on the page where the map is of across
Yeah.
Western Canada. So Lethbridge Hospital is our third busiest place for missions as well. So some of the residents may also fall under their stats. And then just one more note that I should have included for the emergency requests. Industry sites are registered, but anybody who also has a farm or a ranch, or even a, you know, maybe you have a venue like a rodeo grounds, you can also either do a permanent site registration, or for an event, you can do a temporary site registration so that everything is predetermined and we could possibly land right out there.
Well, that's good to know. I don't know that that's ever been considered or thought about. That's something that we can definitely bring to the user groups as well, to see if that's of interest. All right. Well, again, thank you for coming, and we'll look forward to seeing that on the next portion of our agenda.
All right, perfect.
All
I'll
right.
leave a couple of Horizon magazines with you.
Yes.
You had it by email as well, but it's kind of nice to have them in the coffee room.
Okay.
And I will mail you a couple of the 40th anniversary calendars that are out right now.
Okay.
I was on vacation, so they didn't quite make it back into my car. But it is basically a then and now of many of our VIP, very important patients, and a little bit of a history of stars in there as well. So thank you again for your support, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so we will be proceeding now with our second delegation tonight, which is Northback, and we'd invite the CEO of Northback, Mike Young, to be able to present to council an update on, Northback's progress. Thank you.
My pleasure, and thank you very much for allowing us to speak tonight. Firstly, a bit of my background. You'll hear an Australian accent, but I was born in Toronto, lived in Halifax, and then I moved to Kingston when my father left the Navy, was a fitter in a textile plant, and so I went to Queen's, did geology, met a girl, followed her to Australia. So I spent 35 years of my working life in the mining industry in Australia. But as I've discovered, people like to say how many generations they are. So my history goes back to 1654 in Port Royal, Nouvelle France, as it was known then. So we trace our family back a long way in Canada, or New France as it was known then before the British took it away. So a bit of that. So my accent will flick in and out from Canadian to Australian. So I will apologize if it's hard to follow. If you could just do the next slide. Have I got a controller?
No, sure.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, you can just jump to the next one. Firstly, just discuss the municipality of Crowsnest Pass, the non-binding vote of the electors, as it's called. Next one, please. So the question was, do you support the development and operation of the metallurgical coal mine at Grassy Mountain? This was a referendum that was run by the council, Crowsnest Pass. 72% of eligible voters said yes to Grassy Mountain with a 54% voter turnout, which I think if it's not a record, it's close, and that was a very good result for us. Next one, please. Some of the community benefits. Our goal is really to prioritize local procurement. We really want to have a local workforce. More than half of our employees live in Crowsnest Pass. They live in the pass, they play in the pass. Some live just outside the pass in Lundrick. And we do use a lot of local vendors and contract services, and our plan going forward is to do that as much as possible. The one thing we're very keen not to have is a drive-in, drive-out or fly-in, fly-out workforce. We're very keen to have local workforce as much as possible, so we're aiming to achieve that outcome. We have a lot of investment and partnerships in the area. The Livingston Range School Division Nutrition Program has been approved for another year. The Australia Day annual fundraiser is very, very popular. I think we just had our 9th. We raised $54,000 on the night. So what happens is Northback cover all the costs. And so all the money raised on the night is basically donated to the two groups this year. People apply to get the money, and then we go through a selection process. This year, just remind me again.
Hillcrest Fish and Game and the Lundberg Fire Brigade.
And the Lundberg Fire Brigade particularly will buy new Jaws of Life. So the old ones were large and unwieldy, and now the new ones are electrically driven, and they can be managed by all of the members of the fire brigade. And then we do the odd sponsorship as well. The company has also matched up to $30,000 the Australia Day fundraisers, so the total is quite substantial. It's a good fundraising event. We're also working with the Pagani people, and we support Indigenous businesses there and employment. We help develop Pagani Security, which has become a very successful security company. They're extremely professional, and we use them for many things on the mountain for security when we have work going for our events. A lot of other people in the area are using Pagani Security, which is great. And as someone who's worked in Australia and had a direct effect on Aboriginal people employment with mines, it's an amazing thing to see the transformation of young men, particularly when they go from not having a job to having a full-time job, just the attitude, the swagger. It's a real driver personally for me to bring this mine into production to help First Nations people. It's fantastic. Next slide, please. Just some of the numbers. So we've spent about $23 million with 370 local vendors and suppliers since 2018. And then that $910,000 is donations to the past, and that doesn't include the donations I just spoke of. I need a water. Is there any chance I could grab I'm sorry, I should have brought one with me. Thank you. Well, I was thinking of a bourbon, but maybe I'll do that later. I'm sorry about this. And we're also a premier sponsor of the Stars Volleyball Tournament, which is happening here, which there's a lot going on. Next slide, please. So we have done listening tours. The JRP hearing in 2021 addressed a lot of concerns. We're constantly speaking to people about their concerns. We hear from some of the people here today through emails and other avenues, and we take that all on board. A new design would be substantially different than the old one. It addresses public and JRP concerns. It's about protecting waterways and fish. It's about monitoring and maintaining air quality. We've been running public tours on Grassy, and if you haven't been on a public tour, it's worth doing. We could organize a tour for the council if that was something you wanted to do. We have a 12-seat, well, it's 15-seat bus, so we could come and get you, take you there. And that goes for anyone. The public is always welcome to come up and see the condition of the mountain and understand what we're doing on the mountain. We're about minimizing disruption and maximizing benefits to the community, and the economics of the redesigned mine are robust, and that'll flow into jobs and regional benefits. Next slide, please. In the operations, the redesign project will produce less than 3.75 million tons. We haven't finalized that yet of steelmaking coal per year. The project will stay inside the original mine permit boundary that was in the original impact assessment. We'll look at dust suppression practices and monitoring and to minimize airborne particles during construction operations and rehabilitation. We'll minimize water use. Coal is inherently a recycling process. It doesn't use chemicals like copper, lithium, nickel, things like that. It's basically a flotation device that just washes the coal off of the rock. And the other thing about our project is it won't have tailings dams, which is important. Tailings dams. So a lot of issues are the waste from the coal processing plant sometimes gets stored in big tailings ponds, and up in Fort McMurray, that's an ongoing issue for them. So the project doesn't have tailings dams. Well, yeah, next slide, please. In terms of water management, waste rock stockpiles for the new design won't be placed in the Gold Creek watershed. The Gold Creek watershed is a critical habitat for the West Slope cutthroat trout. It's a pretty unique population owing to a dam that was built many years ago down near the town of Frank. So that's prevented invasive species going up the creek. So it's classed as a critical habitat. So in response to that, the waste rock stockpiles won't be in that watershed. The adverse effects are reduced through, there's three ways you reduce adverse effects, and that's avoidance. So the first thing is you avoid creating the adverse effect in the first place. If you can't help that, then you go to mitigation and then control. And that's the holy grail, if you like, or the holy trinity of managing adverse effects. And the first one's the most important. So the first thing you want to do is manage the waste rock in a way that it doesn't even generate the problems. So be that dust or emissions or selenium. Selenium management will employ more than one line of defense. So after avoidance, you look at mitigation, using proven treatment technologies to reduce the selenium levels to what will be allowed by the regulator. So you don't remove selenium, you reduce it to a level that is allowed by the regulator. And the project will meet all existing environmental regulations, of course. You don't get your license to operate unless you do that. And will ensure that the water remains safe for the residents of southern Alberta. Next slide, please. I want to talk a bit about the new coal initiative that just came out. So on December 20th, the government of Alberta announced the new Alberta Coal Industry Modernization Initiative. I don't know if you're aware of that. Probably a bit. Next slide, please. So in the initiative, the government is modernizing its coal policy. They want stronger environmental protection and mining regulations. The key changes are no mountaintop removal mining, which actually isn't done in Alberta. It's a method that's done in Appalachia. No new open pit coal mines in eastern slopes. Strict water protection, no selenium pollution, a shift to underground and advanced mining techniques where possible. So these are some of the key changes we're looking at for new mines. The next steps are they're currently undergoing public engagement, industry engagement during the year. They would like new regulations finalized by the end of 2025. And as is set out in the 1976 Coal Development Policy and the AER's mandate, it's about balancing economic benefits and environmental responsibility. So there's a very good online presence for this that's worth looking at. The important thing is during their announcements, they've basically not reestablished the 76 coal policy, but they've given it a lot of weight. And so that is the go-to document for the AER. And what they're looking to do is modernize that document. So that document has withstood the test of time. It's a very good document. Next slide, please. Just a bit about the project. Next slide, please. So right now, the only activity we have going on is a exploration drilling program. That application was sent to the AER in September of 2023. And went through a long process, and on December 3rd, we had limited participation hearings at Pincher Creek. A lot of people showed up, so we contributed greatly to the economy of Pincher Creek. And then January 14th to 16th, we had full participation hearings in Calgary. So that was the Crow's Nest Pass, MDA Ranch Lands, Livingston Landowners, Verne Mard, Bagani, and Siksika, and Gaina didn't attend, but they were full participants as well. I don't think I'm missing anyone. Oh, and Stoney Nakoda, who represent 3 nations up there, so they showed up as well. So Bagani and Stoney are supportive, and a mix of other support, not support. Just recently, last week, we had the closing arguments at the AER in Calgary, and they now have 90 days from those closing arguments to make a decision on the project. So the next thing I want to talk about is the process going forward. So we currently do not have a mine application in with the AER. So there's just the drilling application at present, and we're waiting for the decision from that. Just the next slide, thanks. So the AER's mandate is to enable the efficient, safe, orderly, and environmentally responsible development of energy and mineral resources in Alberta. That's right out of the Act, the Responsible Energy Development Act. The application process ensures substantial public involvement, including review in a quasi-judicial hearing, and a good example is the drill hearing. And I'll just give you a history of the drill hearing and what went on. So we'd been doing exploration on the mountain for many years, and we've had many exploration applications that went to the AER. But, you know, I think my friends on the left would agree with me when I say it's a political project. I can hear them nodding. So it's a very political project. It's got a lot of attention. So when the drilling application went in, the AER received 126 statements of concern that were opposed to the project, and they received 43 statements of concern that supported the project, as well as a petition. The AER didn't accept the supportive ones. They just accepted the 126 SOCs that didn't support the drilling. Very few of the SOCs actually addressed the drilling program itself, and were most of the SOCs were talking about a future project and other legal questions that had nothing to do with the hearing. Despite that, the AER decided to go ahead with hearings. Now, between the time of receiving the SOCs and them announcing the hearings, there were 3 sets of supplementary information requests. So the AER's technical people reviewed our application and were asking questions about it, which we answered. And then in February of 23, they announced that they'd be going to a hearing. In April or in February, they announced also that people could put in what's called a request to participate in the hearing. And so we received, I forget the numbers, is it 86? So I think there were 86 requests to participate in the hearing. 16 were opposed to the project and the rest were supportive. That ended in May, and then the AER announced that we would have hearings in December and January, which we've had. So through that whole process, the public had several touch points where they could provide comment, concerns, and questions. And then in the actual hearings, the public were allowed to, in the limited participation hearings, were allowed to make statements. And then in the full participation, that was more like a court where there was evidence presented and then cross-examination. So the regulatory structure is quite robust. I've worked in a lot of different jurisdictions around the world, and this is probably one of the most robust I've seen. But that's good. That's what you want. And as we know, with the JRP decision in June of 21, If you don't get it right, they don't say yes. So clearly something's working. The regulatory structure includes, of course, rules, regulations, orders, and enforcement tools, and their goal is to prevent incidents, support innovation, and promote transparency and accountability. And these are all goals that we're perfectly aligned with. So next question, next slide. So the last slide is my ask of the council. So the question is, the thing I'd like to ask you is, be curious. So you're seeing a lot of material in the press, and when you see them, you need to be critical. And that includes critical of us, of statements that we make. You need to be critical. You need to ask who's saying it, and what are their credentials? And where's the science? How do you get from A to B? And the biggest question is, what's the rush? What's the rush? Currently, there's no mine application. And when there is, it will go into a really robust process. We've seen that with the previous application, and we saw it with the drilling. The AER process is incredibly robust and tough on the proponent. So my question is, what's the rush? There's no mine. There's nothing operating up there. A recent, well, not recent, last year in Alberta, government report out of the University of Calgary stated there's no ongoing selenium issue from Grassy. So those are the questions I'd like to ask. And I know you sent us some questions, but I'm not answering them today. And I'll tell you why. Because in those questions, there's the following statement. Please ensure that you provide full and detailed answers to these questions at the hearings being conducted by the AER. We will. We will. When we go through our assessment, we go through our environmental assessments, all of the questions will be put to us and will be answered. A council chamber is not the appropriate forum for a scientific debate. And one of the key things you need to have for a scientific debate is a scientist. And the only thing I can answer questions about is rocks, because I'm a geologist. So the questions that were sent are good questions, and they will be answered in the process. So what I'm asking from the council is, we don't need you to support the mine because you haven't got the information to make that decision. What I would like you to do is wait for the process and see the data before you rush to a decision. And that's it. That's it. That's all I've got to say.
All right, thank you for the presentation, Mike. We appreciate you coming to council. I know you don't have to, but you have, and we appreciate being able to do that.
I wasn't drag kicking and screaming.
No.
This is actually what I love doing.
Yeah, good.
So I'll come anytime.
Yeah, very good. Does council have any questions they would like to start with? Councillor Monteith.
I'm just two things. What's the monitoring process? Like, I'm sure in every project that there are answers to the questions and concerns. My worry is who's monitoring along the way to make sure it stays within that? Because we've seen in the past that that hasn't happened. The provincial government hasn't been good at that. So I'm wondering what's in place for that. And then I'm just wondering, has it been determined how much you have to put away for reclaiming the land at the end?
Oh, you know, the second question, I'll get back to you on how the mine reclamation fund works. And when we move forward into the process, we'll be able to give you more information on that. But I don't have the figures with me at the moment, but I'll take that on notice and we'll get that to you. The first question, the monitoring, we're actually, as a result of the JRP decision and some of the comments on lack of what we call site-specific data, we've actually put several meteorological stations on the mountain. And we also have dust monitors around the Crow's Nest Pass. Now, if that's something the council would like to see in your jurisdiction, we're happy to discuss that with you. So as for the province, I can't comment on the province. I've seen a lot of their water data online. But in terms of monitoring on site, we've been monitoring water levels, water temperature, pH for years, and we have data. And we'll continue to do that. So we've been very strict about collecting baseline data because there are pollutants in the atmosphere that aren't caused by mining, and we see that. There's a lot of other activities going on, farming, trucking, trains, that add to airborne pollution. So what we're doing is we're establishing a baseline so that when we go into our monitoring, we'll be able to see if there's any spikes or anomalies in the data, because that's a really important part of it.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Monteith? I think bottom line, the question is more like, in the end, Northback is accountable to a provincial regulator, correct? And they would be the ones that would give you the parameters that you can work within, and they would monitor the monitoring?
Yes, they would. That's exactly right. So when a mine's approved, they give you a set of conditions. There's a bunch of regulations that we have to follow with respect to emissions, and then we would monitor those. If third parties want to monitor them, or if third parties want to see the data, then that's all part of the transparency that the AER calls for.
Okay.
But that's part of the process.
Quick question, you were talking about a rush. What rush are you referring to?
Well, there's just a lot of rhetoric online and about, lots of questions being put to us online that we're just not in a position to answer because
Okay,
we're
yeah.
not in that process.
Right, that's the next step after the drilling application, is that what you're saying?
Correct. So what would happen is in a mine application, you would put your application into the regulator, and then you would start an impact assessment, an environmental impact assessment study that would go on for some time, and then you would go into what's called the full application that goes to the AER, and then that's where it's open to the public to interrogate, ask questions, and then the AER, if they have concerns, as happened last time, they would have supplementary information requests. You would either go back, answer the question, do some more work. So it's a very robust process.
So the drilling application now is strictly just for the drilling. How long is that drilling program estimated to take?
The program's probably about 2 to 3 months, so it's a small program.
Okay.
Pardon me?
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a small program just up on the mountain to collect additional data for enhancing the mine design. So I was explaining this to Pincher Creek. So they asked us, why do you do more drilling? And the answer is that when you start off with a project, you take data quite a long way apart and then you interpolate in between. And then as you start to do studies and enhance your studies, you want to get more data that's closer together. And I think the best way to think about it is if you've got a quarter section and you take one sample, one soil sample, well, that might be good for a regional study. But say you're the farmer and you want to understand your nutrient needs, well, you would then have to take more samples, say at 50-meter spacing, and then you might look at it and go, well, that's not working, I need more samples. So it's no different than sampling, whether you're taking blood samples from animals and people, or rock samples or drill samples. So we've decided we just want to do some more drilling. A good example is that if you collect more geotechnical data, it may allow you to have a slightly steeper pit wall, and that means that your overall environmental footprint's smaller. So it's good for us, it's good for the economics of the project, and it's good for the overall footprint. So those are, if this program had been approved by the AER as previous programs had been, we'd probably be on our second drilling campaign, just to collect more data. there's one thing geologists love is data. We just, we never get enough of it. So.
All right, any other questions from council? And as you know, and you've mentioned already, there's a lot of questions, but you say those will be coming out in the AER application. Is that correct?
Yeah, so as we go forward, with the application, there'll be community consultation, and some of the more general questions could be answered in that stage, for sure. But the really specific technical questions about the mine, they need to be answered when we're in that technical review process. And that technical review process then goes in front of a hearing where the people can stand up and ask the questions in a quasi-judicial setting, and then the AER takes all that data away and they make a determination. So that's how the system works. So our preference is for people to, prepare all the questions and then bring them to the process. But the key thing is that there is a process that protects, like you test the process, you trust the science. And if we don't get it right and we can't convince the AER, who represent the people of Alberta, that we can manage water and selenium and keep southern Alberta safe, we won't be allowed to operate. But it has to be fair. So, sometimes I feel like we're playing a hockey game where there's no referees and people want the game to start before we even get there. And that's just not the way it works. It's not fair. So we're happy to have a game of hockey, but we want referees and we'd like to be able to show up. So that's our view.
Fair illustration. If there's any other thoughts, comments, questions? Councilor Puchis.
Thanks for coming this evening. I understand your point on, the process and asking questions at the right time. However, I think a lot of concerns and questions, I think, would be helpful to have a little more information on some of these things. And, if instead of having these concerns build up and more worry, it would be helpful to have some information. So along those lines, the things we hear a lot about are, the selenium runoff coming down the mountain into the waterways, the wind from the coal dust and everything. And so, I don't know, I think it would be worthwhile to have some information out there to be like, this is how we plan to reduce selenium from the runoff. This is how we plan to control dust abatement, things like that. Again, I respect the process, but I think that perhaps some more information would be helpful, So I don't know.
No, I appreciate that. And as I said, there'll be a consultation process before we, leap into the technical part. And that's the time when some of those questions can be answered. But currently there's no mine application even before the regulator. So until we do that, we're not in a position to do it. But I agree with you on that. And a lot of the questions we do here are high level general questions. And we certainly don't want to wait until an AER hearing to answer those ones. And as I said earlier, there's a mix of your general questions, which are some of the ones you've asked, and we're certainly keen to address those sooner rather than later. And then there's the really nitty-gritty technical ones that would probably go to a hearing. But I do understand the concerns, for sure. I mean, I read them, I see all the notes, I'm on Substack, so I see all the questions and concerns. It's just that, this isn't the forum for it, but at some point there'll be a proper forum for us to do that. We're pretty keen to. But I guess the one thing is, until there is a mine, there is no possibility of there being a concern, if you know what I mean. So it's a balance, right? But I do understand what you're asking, and it is an education issue. I did get somebody criticized me online. I don't read much of the online stuff because I'm too busy looking at cycling videos. But I did see one where I was accused of saying selenium is about education. And it kind of is. And we need to educate. So I do take your point. We do plan to do it.
Very good. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? I know it's a long process. It's not something that's going to be done overnight. Appreciate you taking the time to come to speak to council tonight, and presenting an update on where Northback is at, and we look forward to hearing more.
Yeah, appreciate it. And as I say, we'll do this regularly, as regularly as you need us. So always happy to come over and have a chat.
Or want us.
Or want us, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, on behalf of our council, thank you again for coming, and we'll be in touch. All right, we will carry on with our next presentation tonight, of which we have federal Liberal candidate, John Brunsma. Yes, okay, John. And I believe where would you like John sitting? I think, yeah, totally good. Yes, for sure. Thank you, John. So on behalf of Town of Fort Macleod, thank you for coming and having an interest in presenting to council tonight, and look forward to hearing from you.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for receiving me. So, yes, I'm the candidate for the federal election coming up. My intent here today is not to stump, it's just to introduce myself and give you a little bit of background of where I've been at and where I'm trying to go. So it's a little hard act to follow here, so excuse me, but I hopefully. So yes, my name is John Brunsma, and I grew up in southern Alberta. My parents were immigrants from Holland right after the war, and they came in with $50 in their pocket and worked the farms and managed to get their own farms. And then I worked on their farms. We had two farms in the area, one in Monarch, one by Lethbridge. And so, as a farmer, you're chasing cows and catching chickens and hoeing beets, and that's how it was. And then when I was 17, I went up to Edmonton for college education, and shortly thereafter got married and had a child. So my college education was put to evening classes. And while I was working, I obtained 3 diplomas from NATE. The primary diploma was my instrumentation and controls, which was most of my career. Also computer systems and business management accounting. So a lot of night school. And that with the instrumentation and controls, worked oil and gas. Heavy industry was pretty much my specialty. So petrochemical plants, chemical plants, plastics, all for major multinational companies doing engineering design. Got the itch to try my own business, so I started engineering, procurement, and construction company for control systems, and did that successfully for 10 years. But family was more important, and if anyone knows running their own business, if you're doing this 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, your family suffers. So I sold the business and then went to work for a major utility providing water, wastewater treatment, and distribution. So then I specialized in cybersecurity for critical infrastructure, which took me all over North America for conferences and training, and then ensuring that the bad guys, state actors, don't hack our systems and cause catastrophes. But all the while, I did lots of traveling through Alberta with the family for camping and canoeing and hiking and kayaking, and so I really have an appreciation for our wilderness. And I retired, took early retirement with my wife. COVID was kind of tough to work when you're working at home and you're a hands-on person. So So we both retired. We had the grandkids in the area here, and we wanted to see them. And my mom is elderly at home in Lethbridge, so to be a caregiver there. So that took us back about 2.5 years ago. I'm not a politician, never was. However, the world has changed in the last very short period of time, and I felt it was, and I hope it doesn't get an overused word, but certainly the most consequential election, I think, of my lifetime, as far as how far-reaching some of the economic coercion that we could see. We're already starting to see it, and yeah. So with that, I think our governments will be making some very important decisions, and I think those decisions would affect my grandchildren, because I'm concerned that we'll see or have the potential of rolling back a lot of the progress that we've made as a province and as a country over the last decade or so in our social justice, our environmental leadership, and I think those are things we can't roll back on. We're going to see even more vulnerable people, and maybe it'll be easy, to forget that in some of the, economic turmoil that could come. We didn't have anyone in the riding providing an alternate, voice, and so, just kind of, I'll do it in that. A little brave. I'm not a politician. I'm a hands-on person, and put the head down and get to work, and have successful projects. But this is something I think all Albertans and all Canadians are anxious about. And in my varied background in disaster recovery and pandemic response and economics, I think I can provide, and listen, and provide the advice to our leadership, whoever it may be, with the caveat that I would certainly look to protect Alberta from bad decisions, and that Albertans like to give and always give a little bit more, but my idea is that we have unique circumstances here, and we want to do our fair share, but not be overburdened, and I think that's where I could provide a voice. So that's kind of why I'm running. Thank you.
Yeah, on behalf of the council, thank you for coming. I know it's no easy decision to throw your hat into the political realm to run for a position like that. It's not a small undertaking, so kudos to you. Does council have any thoughts, questions, comments? I know the one that comes to my mind is we were just sitting down with URCMP talking about crime and some of the different situations they face on a daily basis in terms of how to handle crime, how to ensure those offenders are not becoming repeat offenders, how are they, so that continues to be a problem. I just wondered if you had any thoughts or comments on what you would like to see regarding that.
So with crime, you have a jurisdictional on that with jurisdiction, and I would certainly like to see the federal side of that rework some of the criminal law, and then support the local policing. Even though we have RCMP, they still work under the province directly that way. But criminal law is something that needs to be reviewed. And for myself, a lot of that might be you know, I don't have the experience with it, but I do know that there are specific questions that have to be addressed. My own cybersecurity background provides me some insights into what the RCMP here in the province are dealing with as far as disclosure of search and tapping and that. So it is a really complicated issue, and I would do my best to, you know, bring forth what Alberta has to say. So.
Well, that's good. The other quick one I had, and you often see the little diagrams on equalization payments throughout the country and how that all gets split and how much Alberta contributes versus how much those in the east may contribute. And it's obviously very political on one hand, but on the other hand, the numbers are very real. And I think there's a lot of division in our country for some of those reasons too. And I just wondered on your thoughts on how that should look in terms of ensuring that every Canadian matters and that we are all working together as a country for the betterment of the whole. Whereas when you see some of that, it doesn't indicate that always. So I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I guess there's a few of us gray-haired people here, and why I say that is equalization is been going on for a long time. We've had liberal governments, conservative governments, and I think I would expect to see equalization payments being made, but certainly adjustments into how much is being moved around. And we've seen over the last two sets of governments that there has been movement in that. But as far as abandoning equalization payments, it's one of those political anchors that, man, how do you pull that out? So do you pull it out, or do you just try to work it a little bit? And I do see, you know, even in the Liberal government, and certainly, you know, conservative platform is they're bringing it back, you know, onto the table, saying, yeah, it's going to be there, but let's just, you know, make the numbers a little bit more fair. And so, yeah, it's been a pet peeve of mine for, you know, 40 years. So yeah. Does that answer your question?
Right? Yeah. And like I said, I don't know the history of it or how that all works. It's just the numbers today is what we have to see. And it's, what does that mean? Are we supposed to be proud of that? Or is there something else that we're supposed to be doing with it, right? So, okay. Any other comments, questions? On behalf of council, we wish you well. And I know it's not a small undertaking, so wish you well. And I don't know if you can give us a date for the next election.
Yeah, I would say that. Well, I think all Albertans and Canadians want it quickly, and
Yeah.
you know, just from the feedback that you know the party is giving the media is going to be quick, and we really have problems to work on. So I'm sure
Yeah.
that's what's going to happen. Thank
Very
you.
good.
Thank you, Council.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. That concludes the delegation portion of our agenda. We'll proceed now to consideration of the delegation. We just have one consideration tonight to make, and that's regarding this STARS request. So I will, yeah, we can have some quick discussion on that, or if council wants to defer that to a committee of the whole, that's fine too. Is there a recommendation from administration on that?
The recommendation put forth in the agenda is just the request that was made, that council partners with STARS for the next 3 years, 25, 26, 27, pledging a donation of $2, it's roughly $2 per capita, for a total amount of $6,600 per year.
Very good. Anyone prepared to make that motion, or does council want to do something else this time? Councillor Monteith.
I will make the motion.
Motion to support STARS for a 3-year term of $2 per capita. Is that what we're saying? And if the per capita, or if our capita changes, then the number changes with it, I assume.
They didn't.
Population census.
Well, the amount is I mean, they asked for a specific amount. I'm sure they would not turn down our extra population if we
Yeah.
grow substantially in the next few years, but more or less they take an estimate and it would be the monetary pledge that we'd be committing to at this time, but when we grow by 150 people, we'll maybe throw in a few bucks.
Very well. Is there any further discussion? Motion is on the floor. I definitely appreciate the work they do, and I know, yeah, it's a huge value. I can't imagine the cost of running such an operation too. So motion is on the floor. If there's no further comment, debate, or discussion, I'll call it the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And moving on to unfinished business, we have a pathway master plan, and our director of operations would like to speak to this.
Yeah, so the recommendation to council and the mayor is to approve the pathway master plan as presented. So this has been stalled a little bit as of late. So what we're looking for and what my understanding was the concern from council was the priority list. So the only thing that has changed is that priority list, and that's been realigned to what we're actually completing as a town, as well as to adjust a little bit on what the plans are moving forward. So I did attach just that chart, which was the changes to the master plan, and then recommend the pathway master plan is approved.
Thank you very much. Anyone prepared to make a motion as per the recommendation? Councilor Fox makes the motion. Any further questions for administration? The one question I did have is the surfacing of the pathways. I tried to discover where that's kind of separated in the pathway master plan, but it doesn't really indicate which pathways we want to go asphalt versus which we want to stay gravel. I'm just wondering, did I miss something, or is there another?
So those are, and Anthony, if you want to jump in here, if I'm not saying correctly, but in the pathway master plan, there are designated pathways that will be asphalt versus, like for example, in the Wilderness Park, where they will remain a graveled pathway. So based on the actual area and the impact there, that's the designation of the pathway.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out which ones are indicated as asphalt and which ones are indicated as gravel. Is that the color, or is that the...
Yeah, so my understanding, and so anything, well, it's not entirely exact, because as you'll see, let's say, take a look at the one that's going down Linden Road, that's on figure 3.3, this thing doesn't have page numbers. Back to the drawing board. If you see on page 3.3, the pathway that goes from that parking lookout down Linden Road, that would be an asphalt walking trail. So it'd be like a pathway, but here, I guess here it's, but you'll also see that on another page in the Wilderness Park, we have walking trails, because walking trails, I mean, I could see why that would be a bit confusing. Because we are intending to pave down Linden Road, not have the same thing that would go into the Wilderness Park, because Wilderness Park wouldn't see asphalt pathways necessarily. They would see that, I don't know exactly what kind of rock it is, that kind of shaly limestone stuff. The sidewalks are really easily identified. And then throughout, I guess it's just the one then, because the rest all
So it
appear.
must be walking trail would be asphalt?
Well, no. What happened here is pathways are asphalt.
Okay.
They're orange. The walking trails, I don't think we defined that one as perfect, because I knew that the nature trail is more of that, cut trail. But I think here what would probably have to be done is that the one down Linden Road should be upgraded to a pathway. and not be a walking trail. Because as a walking trail, I would anticipate more of a shale, right? It's a trail, it's not gonna be paved. So now council's gonna tell us to take it back and change the map, you know, that makes sense.
No, I think just overall, just making sure we're clear on where we want to go, right? Because I do fully appreciate the value of the asphalt trails. I think they make a huge difference, more than I thought. Just even for senior citizens or whoever, that it's easier to take those trails. So I think it's good to have a bit of a vision of what long term we'd like to see as asphalt and which ones we want to stay gravel.
And to defend Brendan's position, you know, he picked this up, it's been on the shelf for like 2 years, and so he's like, what did this need? Well, it needs to be, the priorities need to be fixed, so this will, I'll take this, fall on my sword for the, you know, the need to fix the pathway colors in here, but yeah, otherwise, I think essentially council's still on board with kind of the priorities. We have heard nothing but praise for the stuff that's done down by the river. We're kind of like the junior Banff now with some nice river pathways. And once we go down all the way to the golf course, you know, people will be even more excited because you have such a long pathway to run and bike. And like you said, it makes it available for, you know, people with mobility issues and, you know, strollers and things when it is paved. So lots of good feedback there. But
Yeah, I think that's one thing that, because I just quick searched asphalt, and asphalt only is just regarding maintenance. It's not regarding what we plan to do in the future. So I think it'd be good to have that kind of incorporated into the report. But otherwise, I think the report is totally good. So the next, these 1 to 7 that's just priorities. That's not years, right? So it could take much longer than 7 years to do it all, because I think we're already kind of done number 1, right? And we're on to number 2. And then after that, it's adding some amenities, signage, and so on. And then after that, there's a list will come back, because I think there was thoughts of other areas of town in the north.
yeah, I mean, we've had
Northeast.
discussions with council about other areas that need to be happening. And I don't think, I mean, this can be an all-encompassing document. That's, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe we have a part where we bring it back and we say, hey, we're adding this to the list, right?
Yeah.
And we maybe identify, well, you know, what are our next 3 pathways? What are they made of? Okay, great. Priorities, and then we set the budgets, and then, you know, the next 5 years, we make a few more pathways.
Yeah, a bit of a living document, right? It's not a fixed document that's going to be like it is. So, all right. Motions on the floor. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, we'll call to question. All those in favor? Any of those opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to community and special event policy, and our director of community services would like to speak to this one.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. We are at the final stages for the special event policy, and we've had this brought to Council at the committee of the whole level. We've done some stakeholder consult and got some feedback from some groups that host some of these large events, and we've incorporated both Council and those stakeholder comments and feedback into the policy. So just to kind of remind Council some of the changes that we made to the draft that was presented at the committee of the whole meeting, we removed an expected large number of participants from the definition of the major special event, mostly because we didn't want necessarily a certain number to have to be in or participating in the event. It can still be a significant event, even if there's only 100 people there, and the impact to residents and neighbors or businesses could still be high, even if there was less than that. So we opted to take that out. Councillor Henniger had asked for a note or a template to be able to be provided for emergency response plans, so that people have a quick and easy way of just ensuring that those are suitable when they're presented. And then we did make an exception noted for the small gatherings at public spaces. So if a birthday party is held in one of the green spaces in the parks, and that simple event can happen and doesn't require an event permit. We did also, I didn't mention it here, but we did also add the exclusion about the community hall and events that are held at the community hall. Those are bound by the policies and the conditions of the rental of the community hall, and so those also do not fit in here. You just have to have the appropriate liquor license if you're serving alcohol and the insurance, and those become part of the hall rental agreement, so they are not also covered in this policy. I believe that that's all the changes that we made. We're looking forward to having this in place, and hopefully that it'll help both administration and those who want to host events just go a little bit smoother and outline clearly what roles and expectations are for the event organizers and then for the town. Happy to take questions if you have them.
Thank you very much. Is anyone prepared to make a motion as per the recommendation to approve the policy as presented? Mr. Poitras makes the motion. Any further questions for administration? Discussion? No one wants to debate this? Looks good. I think the changes are sufficient, and as long as administration sees that it'll work well, then I think it's a good thing. So with motion on the floor, we'll call it to question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, staff. And moving on to new business, rescheduling of organizational meeting, and our CEO, Anthony Burdett, would like to speak to this one.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So there have been some changes made in the Municipal Government Act that require a certain amount of training, some mandatory training for all councillors before their organizational meeting. Before the first organizational meeting after the election. So right now the election is scheduled for October 20th. We had our organizational meeting scheduled for October 27th, but due to scheduling, we are currently working on a group training session with the MD and Claresholm and Stavely so that we can get the most for our dollar. But that's going to be happening on the 30th. And so what is required is that we bump our organizational meeting, and we're proposing that it gets rescheduled to November 3rd. 2025, starting at 6 p.m. to allow for this required orientation training for yourselves or any new elected council members in compliance with the Municipal Government Act. Yes, and further to approve the amended 2025 council meeting date schedule as presented.
Anyone prepared to make a motion as per the recommendation? Councillor Patel makes the motion. Any further discussion, questions? Councillor Monteith.
Background for this. So if someone happens to miss that training, does that mean they can't participate in the organizational meeting or be appointed to committees, or like what's the purpose here?
I don't know the answer to whether someone missed the training. I think we would have to reschedule. I don't think it would hold up the whole engine of the process, but it is something that is required by the Municipal Government Act to have this training. And so that's what we're working with our lawyers and these other individuals to provide that. But I will get back to you on, let's say someone has a sick day and they miss the training. Does that delay our meeting, or do they have to just, maybe they have to be put on hold until they can act as a counselor? But I'll get back to you on that one, Councillor Monteith.
Planning to be sick that day? All right, motion is on the floor. If there's no further comments or questions, we'll call it the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And then the last item is awarding of a closed bid land sale, and our CEO, Anthony Burdett, would like to present this one as well.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The recommendation this evening is that Council approves the award of the closed bid land sale of roll number 2129600, which is on 338 15th Street, which used to be the Imperial Oil property, to Delu Enterprises Limited for the purchase price of $220,500. This land sale was advertised in the paper and online in a closed bid process, and bids were received and accepted until noon on Friday, February 28th. There is some consolidation and some land subdivision lines that need to get sorted out for this, so this would be contingent to that subdivision and everything happening there. The minimum bid price was set at 190, and the winning bid price and recommendation is 220,500. Yes, and in their submission, they identified that they'd be using it for storage and industrial purposes. Any questions? I would gladly answer those.
Okay, very good. Anyone prepared to make a motion as per the recommendation? Councillor Fox makes the motion. Any further discussion or questions? If anyone's asking which zoning is on those lands currently?
Industrial general.
Industrial general, right? Okay. If there's no further discussion or questions, it was advertised, it was in the paper, it was promoted, and we want to thank the successful bidder and wish them well. So with that, I'll call the motion to question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And that does conclude the public portion of our meeting. We'll call a motion for one in-camera land sale item, and who would like to make that motion? Councillor Fox. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right.